The grand hall of the stellar empire gleamed with polished metal and pulsing lights. 12 council members sat in a half-circle, their tall forms casting long shadows. In the center stood Princess Lyra, her blue skin shimmering under the harsh lights. She kept her head high, though she knew why they had called her here. "The human diplomat has accepted our offer," said Council Leader Toran. His voice was flat, showing no emotion. "You will be sent to Earth next week." Lyra's three-fingered hands tightened at her sides. She had known this was coming, but hearing it still hurt. "May I ask which human?" she asked, keeping her voice steady. A hologram appeared in the center of the room. It showed a man with brown hair and kind eyes. He looked small compared to her people. "His name is Jack. He serves as Earth's junior ambassador to the Galactic Alliance," said Toran. "He is considered suitable for this arrangement." "Suitable because no one cares if his bloodline ends with him," said another council member with a short laugh. "Just as no one cares if yours does." Lyra did not respond. She had heard worse in the past 10 years, since the tests had shown she could not have children with any male of her species. In the Stellar Empire, this made her useless. Royal blood meant nothing without the ability to pass it on. "Do not look so sad, Princess," said Toran, using her title like it was a joke. "The humans do not know you are Barren. They think this marriage honors them. They are still new to space travel and eager to please the older races." "Does the human know I cannot have children?" Lyra asked. "We did not tell them." "It does not matter. This marriage is just for show," said Toran. "It will keep Earth happy while we use their planet's resources." Lyra looked at the hologram again. Jack's face seemed kind, but that meant nothing. Once he learned the truth, he would surely treat her with the same scorn her people did. "You leave in 7 days," said Toran. "A servant will help you pack. Remember to behave well on Earth. You may be useless for breeding, but you can still be useful for politics." The council dismissed her with a wave. Lyra walked out with her head high, though inside she felt hollow. 1 week later, Lyra stood in a small room at Earth's main spaceport. Outside, a crowd had gathered to see the alien princess who would marry one of their own. The air felt thick and warm compared to her home world. The door opened, and Jack walked in. He was shorter than her by a head, but his shoulders were broad. He wore a formal Earth suit and looked nervous. "Princess Lyra," he said with a bow. "Welcome to Earth. I hope your journey was comfortable." Lyra studied him. His voice was deeper than she had expected. "It was adequate," she said coldly. Jack nodded, seeming unsure what to say next. "I've prepared a home for us. It's not a palace, but I hope you'll find it pleasant." "It does not matter where I live," said Lyra. "This marriage is just politics. We need not pretend otherwise." Jack looked surprised. "I understand this is arranged, but I hoped we might become friends, at least." Lyra almost laughed. Friends? Did he not understand what she was? What this marriage meant? "You don't know what I am, do you?" she asked. "You're Princess Lyra of the Stellar Empire," Jack said simply. "And soon, you'll be my wife." Lyra turned away. Let him keep his illusions for now. Soon enough, he would learn the truth that he had been given damaged goods, a princess with no future, the last of her bloodline. The marriage would take place tomorrow. After that, she would see what kind of man this human really was. Jack's home sat on the edge of the city, where tall buildings gave way to green hills. It was small by royal standards, just 6 rooms, but each space was warm and filled with color. Lyra stood in the living room, taking in the strange items around her. "This will be your home now," Jack said, setting down her bags. "I know it's not what you're used to." Lyra touched a plant with red flowers. "What is this?" "Roses. From my mother's garden." Jack smiled. "They reminded me of the star clusters near your home world." Lyra pulled her hand back. Why would he try to make her feel welcome? Did he not understand this was just politics? "Your sleeping chamber," she asked. "I'll show you the bedrooms. There are two." Jack led her down a short hall. "This one is yours." He opened a door to a room with a large bed and blue walls. "I read that your people prefer cooler temperatures, so I installed extra cooling in here." Lyra stepped inside, surprised. He had prepared for her comfort. "My room is across the hall," Jack continued. "The bathroom is at the end. I know your bathing customs are different, so I got some mineral salts that might be similar to what you use." Lyra stared at him. "Why are you doing this?" Jack looked confused. "Doing what?" "Acting like this is real. Like I matter." Jack's face softened. "Because you do matter, Lyra. I know this marriage was arranged, but we'll be living together. I want you to be comfortable." Lyra turned away. His kindness was worse than cruelty. It gave her hope where there should be none. 3 days passed. Jack went to work at the Earth Embassy each morning, leaving Lyra alone. She explored the house, studied human books, and watched their strange entertainment programs. On the 4th night, Jack brought home food in paper bags. "I thought we could try something different," he said, unpacking boxes. "This is called pizza. It's a popular Earth food." Lyra sat at the table. The food smelled strong but not unpleasant. "How was your day?" Jack asked as they ate. "I learned more about your planet's history," Lyra said. "Your people fought many wars." Jack nodded. "We did. We still struggle sometimes, but we're trying to be better." "My people think humans are primitive," Lyra said, watching his reaction. Jack took another bite of pizza. "Maybe we are in some ways, but being advanced technologically doesn't always mean being advanced in all ways." Lyra put down her food. "Do you know why they sent me to marry you?" Jack looked at her carefully. "The official reason was to strengthen ties between our worlds. The real reason is that I am worthless to them," Lyra said flatly. "I cannot have children with my kind. This makes me useless in my culture." She waited for his disgust or pity. Instead, Jack just nodded slowly. "I suspected there was more to it," he said. "Your council members seemed too pleased with themselves about this arrangement. You are not upset that they gave you a barren wife." Jack set down his food and looked directly at her. "Lyra, on Earth, a person's worth isn't measured by their ability to have children. Many humans choose not to have kids. Others can't. It doesn't make them less valuable." Lyra felt something shift inside her. "Your people are strange." "Maybe," Jack smiled. "Or maybe we just value different things than your council does." That night, Lyra lay in her cool blue room, thinking about Jack's words. For the first time since arriving on Earth, she wondered if perhaps being sent here wasn't a punishment after all. Maybe it was an escape. 2 weeks passed. Lyra began to feel less like a stranger in Jack's home. She learned to cook simple Earth foods and watched the birds that came to the garden. Jack taught her about human customs and took her to see the city on weekends. One evening, Jack came home looking excited. "Lyra, I want you to meet someone, a friend of mine who might be able to help you." Lyra looked up from the book she was reading. "Help me with what?" "With understanding why you can't have children with your people. My friend Dr. Ellis specializes in alien biology. She's very good and very discreet." Lyra stiffened. "Why would I want to know more about my failure?" Jack sat beside her. "It's not about failure. It's about understanding. What if there's more to it than your people knew?" Lyra wanted to refuse, but curiosity tugged at her. Her people's doctors had simply declared her defective and moved on. No one had tried to understand why. "Fine," she said. "I will meet your doctor." Dr. Ellis's lab was bright and clean. The doctor herself was a small woman with gray hair and quick eyes. She shook Lyra's hand without fear or disgust. "Jack has told me a little about your situation," Dr. Ellis said. "With your permission, I'd like to run some tests. Our approach to reproductive biology might be different from your people's." Lyra agreed, and Dr. Ellis took samples and scans. Jack waited outside while they worked. Your reproductive system is fascinating, Dr. Ellis said as she studied the results. It's not like anything I've seen before. It does not work, Lyra said bitterly. That is all that matters. I wouldn't say that. Dr. Ellis pointed to a screen showing Lyra's cellular structure. Your cells have unusual patterns. It's not that they're defective. They're just different from your species norm. Lyra moved closer to the screen. Different how? Your reproductive cells have a unique molecular structure. They're incompatible with the males of your species, but that doesn't mean they're non-functional. Dr. Ellis looked thoughtful. In fact, they remind me of something I've seen before. She pulled up another image on her screen. These are human reproductive cells. Notice anything? Lyra stared at the screen. There were similarities between her cells and the human cells, similarities that didn't exist between her cells and those of stellar males. This is impossible, she whispered. Not impossible. Just unexpected. Dr. Ellis smiled. Biology is full of surprises. Your cells didn't match with your species because they've evolved differently. But they might be compatible with other species, including, possibly, humans. Lyra's mind raced. Are you saying I could have children with a human? I'm saying it's theoretically possible. Your reproductive system isn't broken. It's just waiting for the right match. Dr. Ellis touched Lyra's arm gently. You're not barren, princess. You're just ahead of your time. That night, Lyra and Jack sat in their garden under the stars. Lyra told him everything Dr. Ellis had said. So your people were wrong about you, Jack said when she finished. They saw only what they expected to see, Lyra agreed. A failure to continue the pure bloodline. But instead, you might be the start of something new. Jack looked up at the stars. Something that could bring our species closer together. Lyra felt something warm inside her chest. Hope, perhaps, or possibility. Dr. Ellis wants to do more tests, she said, to understand this better. Jack nodded. What do you want to do? Lyra thought about the council, about how they had thrown her away like broken pottery. She thought about Jack, who had treated her with kindness from the first day. I want to know the truth, she said. I want to prove them wrong. For the first time since coming to Earth, Lyra smiled. The stars above seemed brighter somehow, full of new possibilities she had never imagined. A month passed. Lyra spent many hours at Dr. Ellis's lab, learning about her unique biology. At home, things with Jack were changing. Small touches lingered. Conversations stretched late into the night. Lyra found herself watching Jack when he wasn't looking, noticing the kindness in his eyes and the strength in his hands. One evening, they walked along the river that ran through the city. Lights from tall buildings reflected on the water. I received a message today, Jack said as they stopped on a bridge. From the Stellar Empire. Lyra tensed. What did they want? A delegation is coming to Earth next month to check on our alliance. Jack looked at her. Your cousin Prince Orion will be with them. Lyra's hands gripped the bridge railing. Prince Orion had been her intended mate once, before the test showed she was barren. He had rejected her publicly, calling her bloodline tainted. I do not wish to see him, she said quietly. Jack placed his hand over hers. You don't have to if you don't want to. But maybe it's a chance to show them how wrong they were about you. Lyra looked at Jack's hand covering hers. His skin was warmer than hers, a different shade. Yet they fit together well. You would stand with me, she asked. Always, Jack said simply. Something shifted between them in that moment. Lyra moved closer, and Jack's arm slipped around her waist. They stood together, watching the river flow beneath them. Jack's home no longer felt foreign to Lyra. She had added her own touches, plants from her world that Dr. Ellis helped cultivate, art she created herself. She cooked meals that blended earth and stellar flavors. She had stopped thinking of returning to her world. One night, as they prepared dinner together, Jack's hand brushed against hers. Instead of moving away, Lyra caught his fingers with her own. I've been thinking, she said, about what Dr. Ellis discovered. About my biology being compatible with humans. Jack set down the knife he was using to cut vegetables. What about it? Did you know? Lyra asked. When you agreed to marry me, did you know this was possible? Jack shook his head. No. I agreed because it seemed like a good way to strengthen ties between our worlds. And because... He paused. Because... Lyra prompted. Because when I saw your image, I thought you looked sad. Like you needed a friend. Jack smiled slightly. I didn't expect to feel more than friendship. And now? Lyra moved closer to him. Now I do. Jack's voice was soft. Feel more, I mean. The kitchen was quiet except for the sound of their breathing. Then Lyra did something she had thought about for weeks. She leaned forward and pressed her lips to Jack's in the human gesture of a kiss. The day the stellar delegation arrived, Earth's sky was bright blue. Jack and Lyra stood together at the spaceport, waiting. Lyra wore a dress that combined Earth and stellar styles, her blue skin complemented by the deep red fabric. Are you ready? Jack asked, squeezing her hand. Yes, Lyra said. They sent me away thinking I was worthless. I want them to see that they were wrong. The ship landed with a soft hiss. The door opened, and tall blue figures walked out. At the front was Prince Orion, his face cold and proud. When he saw Lyra holding hands with Jack, his eyes narrowed. Princess Lyra, he said, his voice carrying across the landing pad. I see you have fully embraced your situation. Lyra lifted her chin. I have embraced my future, Prince Orion. Something my past could never offer me. Orion's eyes flickered between Lyra and Jack. We have much to discuss about the future of our alliance. Yes, Lyra agreed, standing tall beside Jack. We certainly do. 3 days after the stellar delegation arrived, Lyra woke feeling strange. Her body felt different, warmer than usual. She sat up in bed, trying to understand what was happening. The bedroom door opened, and Jack looked in. Are you okay? You slept late. I feel odd, Lyra said. I should see Dr. Ellis. Jack drove her to the lab. Dr. Ellis ran tests while Jack waited outside, worried. Lyra lay on the examination table, watching Dr. Ellis's face as she studied the results. Lyra, Dr. Ellis said finally, I need to show you something. On the screen appeared an image Lyra didn't understand at first. Then she saw it, a small cluster of cells, growing and dividing. What is that? Lyra asked, though something in her already knew. That, Dr. Ellis said with a smile, is your child. You're pregnant, Lyra. Lyra stared at the screen. How is this possible? Just as we theorized. Your reproductive system is compatible with humans. Dr. Ellis touched Lyra's hand. It's early, but the embryo looks healthy. It's a hybrid of your DNA and Jack's. Tears filled Lyra's eyes. A child. My child. Something her people had said was impossible. Dr. Ellis nodded. The first human stellar child ever. You're making history, Lyra. Jack's face showed shock, then wonder when Lyra told him the news. He sat beside her in Dr. Ellis's office, staring at the screen showing their child. We're going to be parents, he said in amazement. Is it? Will it be healthy? The genetic combination appears stable, Dr. Ellis explained. The child will have traits from both species. We'll need to monitor carefully, but I see no reasons for concern yet. Jack took Lyra's hand. This changes everything. Yes, Lyra agreed. My people will want to know. Dr. Ellis looked troubled. Perhaps we should keep this quiet until... The door burst open. Prince Orion stood there with 2 guards, his face dark with anger. So it's true, he said, staring at the screen. One of our technicians detected unusual readings from this lab and reported it to me. Lyra stood up. You have no right to barge in here. I have every right when it concerns stellar royal genetics. Orion moved closer to the screen. This abomination cannot be allowed. Jack stepped between Orion and Lyra. "That's our child you're talking about." "A mistake that must be corrected," Orion said coldly. "Princess Lyra will return with us immediately for proper medical treatment." "No," Lyra said firmly. "I will not go anywhere with you." Orion's eyes narrowed. "This is not a request. This is an order from the Stellar Empire. What grows inside you belongs to us." "She belongs to no one," Lyra said, placing a hand on her stomach. "And neither do I." "You were given to the human as a diplomatic gesture," Orion said. "Now that you have proven unexpectedly useful, you will return home." Dr. Ellis stepped forward. "This is my medical facility, and you are not welcome here. Please leave before I call security." Orion looked at the guards with him. "Take the princess." As they moved forward, Jack blocked their path. "You're on Earth now. Our laws protect Lyra and our child." "This matter is beyond Earth laws," Orion said. "This is about the future of the stellar bloodline." "The same bloodline you said I couldn't continue?" Lyra asked bitterly. "The same bloodline that cast me out as worthless." Orion didn't answer. Instead, he pulled out a communication device. "I am calling for an emergency meeting of the Galactic Alliance Council. This situation requires their judgment." He looked at Lyra coldly. "Until then, Princess, remember your duty to your people." After they left, Lyra sank into a chair, trembling. "They want to take our baby." Jack knelt beside her. "I won't let them. I promise you that." Dr. Ellis looked grim. "This just became about more than medicine. You'll need legal help now." "And diplomatic help," Jack added. "I'll contact Earth's ambassador right away." Lyra looked down at her still flat stomach. Inside her grew a child that shouldn't be possible. A child that could change everything between humans and the Stellar Empire. A child they would fight for with every breath. The Galactic Alliance headquarters floated in space between Earth and the Stellar Empire. It was a massive ring-shaped station where representatives from all member worlds could meet on neutral ground. Lyra had never been there before. She sat beside Jack in the Earth shuttle as it approached the station. Dr. Ellis sat across from them, along with Tom, Earth's head ambassador. They had spent the last 2 days preparing for this meeting. "Are you ready?" Jack asked softly, holding Lyra's hand. "Yes," she said, though her heart beat fast with worry. "They cannot take our child. I won't let them." The shuttle docked, and they entered the great hall where the council would meet. Representatives from 12 worlds sat in a circle. The Stellar Empire delegation, led by Prince Orion, was already there. When Orion saw Lyra, his face showed disgust. "The council will now hear the dispute between Earth and the Stellar Empire," announced the head counselor, a tall being with silver skin. "Prince Orion, please state your case." Orion stood. "The Stellar Empire claims rights to the genetic material currently developing within Princess Lyra. She is a royal of our world, and what grows inside her contains royal stellar DNA. This hybrid should not exist. It must be studied and controlled by our scientists." "Controlled," Jack whispered angrily. The head counselor nodded. "Ambassador Tom," Earth's response. Tom stood. "Earth recognizes this child as a citizen of our world, with a human father and a mother who legally resides on Earth. We reject any claim the Stellar Empire has on this unborn child or Princess Lyra, who is now family to one of our citizens." "Princess Lyra was given to Earth as a diplomatic gesture," Orion countered. "She remains stellar property." "I am not property." Lyra's voice rang out, shocking the council. She stood, facing the circle of representatives. "I wish to speak." The head counselor hesitated, then nodded. "The council will hear Princess Lyra." Lyra stepped into the center of the circle. "The Stellar Empire sent me away because they believed I was barren. They declared me worthless because I could not continue the royal bloodline with a stellar male. They gave me to a human as if I were an unwanted gift." She looked at each council member. "But they were wrong about me. I wasn't barren. I was different. My biology had evolved in a new direction. Dr. Ellis can explain the science. Dr. Ellis presented her findings, showing images of Lyra's unique cellular structure and how it matched with human DNA. This isn't a mistake, Dr. Ellis concluded. It's evolution. Princess Lyra's biology represents a natural bridge between our species. Murmurs filled the room. Orion stood again, angry. Even if this is true, the child still contains royal stellar genetics. It belongs to our empire. No, Lyra said firmly. The same people who threw me away now want to claim my child. You called me defective. You said my bloodline was tainted. You cannot reject me and then claim rights to my baby. One council member, a wise elder from a distant world, spoke up. Prince Orion, if Princess Lyra had remained barren as you believed, would you have wanted her back? Orion hesitated, then said coldly, no. But that was before we knew her condition was valuable. Jack interrupted, standing beside Lyra. You only want her now because she can do something you thought impossible. The head counselor raised a hand for silence. This is a complex matter. Princess Lyra, what do you want? Lyra stood tall, her hand protectively over her stomach. I want my freedom. I want to raise my child with Jack on Earth. I want the Stellar Empire to acknowledge that they were wrong about me. She looked directly at Prince Orion. You sent me away believing I was the end of my bloodline. Instead, I am the beginning of a new one that will bridge our worlds rather than keep them apart. The council chamber fell silent. All eyes were on Lyra as she stood proudly, no longer the discarded princess, but a woman fighting for her future. The Galactic Alliance Council debated for hours. Representatives from all 12 worlds spoke, some supporting the Stellar Empire's claim, others defending Earth and Lyra's right to choose. Through it all, Lyra sat with her head high, Jack's hand firmly in hers. Finally, the head counselor called for silence. We have reached a decision. The great hall grew quiet. Lyra felt her heart beating fast. The council recognizes that Princess Lyra is a free being, not property to be given or taken, the head counselor announced. Her child represents a new evolutionary path that neither Earth nor the Stellar Empire could have predicted. Prince Orion started to object, but the head counselor raised a hand to stop him. The child will be recognized as a citizen of both worlds, with full rights and protections under galactic law. The Stellar Empire has no special claim to this child beyond what any world has to its citizens. Relief washed over Lyra. She squeezed Jack's hand tightly. Furthermore, the head counselor continued, this council recommends that both Earth and the Stellar Empire establish a joint scientific program to study this evolutionary development, with Princess Lyra's willing participation if she chooses to give it. The head counselor looked directly at Lyra and Jack. Your child represents something rare and valuable, a natural bridge between two species. This may be the beginning of a new chapter in galactic history. As the meeting ended, Prince Orion approached Lyra, his face tight with anger and something else, perhaps regret. You may have won today, he said quietly, but this is not over. The Empire will be watching. Let them watch, Lyra replied. Let them see what they threw away and what I have built instead. 6 months later, Lyra stood in the nursery of their new home. Her stomach was large now, the baby growing strong according to Dr. Ellis's tests. The room was painted in soft colors that matched both Earth's sky and the stellar night. Jack came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her. The ambassador says we've had 3 more requests from stellar families wanting to visit Earth for medical consultations. Lyra smiled. So I'm not the only one. Dr. Ellis thinks there might be many others like you. Stellar people whose biology is shifting toward compatibility with humans. Jack rested his hand on her rounded belly. You're just the first to discover it. Because they sent me away, Lyra said softly. Their mistake became our miracle. She turned in Jack's arms to face him. The council sent a message today. They want to create a new diplomatic position for us. Ambassadors of Evolutionary Unity. Jack laughed. That's quite a title. It means our child won't be alone. Others will follow. Lyra placed her hand over his on her stomach. We'll build a bridge between our worlds, one child at a time. The baby kicked strongly, making them both smile. 1 year later, Lyra stood before the Galactic Alliance Council again. This time, she held a small child in her arms, a daughter with blue-tinted skin, and Jack's brown eyes. This is Star, Lyra said proudly, the first of a new generation. The council members leaned forward to see the child, who looked back at them with curious eyes. Even Prince Orion, now the Stellar Empire's official representative, seemed unable to look away from the healthy, beautiful child. We have received reports of 7 more successful human stellar pregnancies, reported the head counselor. It seems Princess Lyra was indeed the herald of an evolutionary shift. Jack stood beside his family, his face full of pride. What was once considered impossible is now our future. As they left the council chamber, Lyra held her daughter close. She remembered the cold hall where the Stellar Council had sent her away, believing her to be worthless. Now she walked tall, carrying the most precious gift, proof that they had been wrong. Where to now? Jack asked as they boarded their shuttle. Lyra smiled, looking down at their daughter. Home. And then, the stars. Behind them, delegates from Earth and the Stellar Empire were already discussing new treaties, new exchanges, new possibilities. All because of a princess they had thought was barren, given away to a human who saw her true worth. The mistake that became a miracle, the end that became a beginning. The future no one had imagined, except the two who had made it possible.